everyone. My name is Trisha Metke, and my article title was Philosophical Problems with Environmentalism. I'd just like to say that after reading through the article a few times and finally feeling like I comprehend the information provided, I believe the main point of the article is that environmentalists lack depth in their arguments for preserving the environment, and that their viewpoint is so generalized they essentially contradict themselves in the end. And what I mean by that is that environmentalists are constantly faced with the issue that it's literally impossible to save every living thing on Earth. And with that being said, since it's impossible, environmentalists must argue and distinguish one living thing and why it's essentially superior over another living thing. Therefore, that in itself completely throws away their argument of why they need to save and preserve everything in nature. The authors of this article found many ways to back up their argument and rebuttal the generalized arguments of environmentalists. After reading through the portion of the article titled The Demarcation Problem, I was actually in awe by the points that were made. Personally, I'm all for saving the environment and preserving nature, and I'm a very green person, and I follow things like that. However, the author made a great point that environmentalists fail to recognize they lack distinction between natural and artificial. During the portion of this article, the argument was made that things such as mountains, according to environmentalists, are important for their own sake, while highways only have instrumental value to us as humans. However, the author pointed out that both mountains and highways are made of rock, so who is to say one version is more important over the other? I liked how during this argument, the author made the connection that animals also modify their environment. For example, the author says that an anthill is just as much a highway, and ants modify nature that way, therefore modifying the environment just like we do. In the end, what environmentalists wish to preserve is being modified in another force of nature anyways. Another good point made by the author is environmentalists feel so strongly because they're attached to the aesthetic nature has and not its actual function. According to the author, in quotes, our attachments are to objects and people as they really are and not just to the experiences they facilitate. Environmentalists have a deep love for nature simply because they're attached to it being in its purest form and not modified. We feel like a connection, like we feel like we must preserve it. We can't explain it. This is similar to those who see an original photograph and prefer it over a photocopy. Though it's the same picture, we have an emotional connection to the original. Again, this argument by environmentalists lacks functionality for present day, and it disregards the perspective of civilization. So it's putting our needs behind nature and the functionality of what we use from nature. To me, I believe that the social contract theory can be applied to this article. I believe this theory applies because ethical egoism is at the basis of this theory, and after rereading the article, I couldn't imagine a better fit, to be honest. Ethical egoism is that a person's own welfare is the only thing valuable to the individual. While to philosophers, environmentalists may not have a specific or detailed enough argument for their standpoint. However, philosophers forget that though the environment may not serve as much of a purpose as nature in its true form to us, it still serves a purpose for the living things that depend on their environment. For instance, using trees to build a home versus just in nature, to a philosopher, they feel that one outweighs in purpose and functionality rather than the other. Obviously, using trees to build homes outweighs leaving trees in nature to a philosopher. However, those trees are also a home to other animals, and they provide us with oxygen as well as numerous other things, and philosophers seem to forget that. They're only viewing it from the standpoint of how can we use these things? How can we use these things in everyday life? How can they modify our lives and make them easier? What's the functionality of these in those terms? Philosophers forget that though animals cannot speak or share their thoughts, these natural things serve a purpose to all walks of life, not just us. They're not just at our disposal. And I related that to real life because actually in the article, it helped me connect this. The philosophers stated that environmentalists and animal activists, while they want to preserve nature, they're not okay with that in everyday life, preserving animals in the zoo. And I can also see that connection in real life because that is true. There are many, many issues with the zoos nowadays and letting animals free, letting them be free. But also, keeping some of those animals in the zoo is helping our endangered species and actually preserving those animals. So it is it's hard. There's a fine line between what's preserving and what doesn't need to be preserved in environmentalist views. I also see issues in real life with these problems with just normal politics. We see it every single day, especially now. In the news, we have green deals, we have people that want to preserve oil and not go into certain areas and do these things and watch out for ocean ecosystems. And we also see the people who believe in the functionality and bettering our civilization. So this issue is definitely prevalent in real life. So if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below, and hopefully I can give you guys a little more insight. Thank you.